Millstone Street learned to look away. At first, it was just polite. Neighbors crossing to the sunnier side of the block, eyes sliding past the vine-choked bungalow at the corner. Later, it was superstition. Kids wouldn't ride their bikes past the garage behind the house with the buckled porch. The door was steel, windowless, a dull slab the color of a storm cloud. No handle, no lock, just there, like a scar the street had healed around. People said the council had welded it shut in '81, after the last owner, Paul Draycott, the mechanic, vanished midwinter. His wife left a week later. The bank followed a year after that. The vines came last and stayed. Decades passed. The trash cans marched, the mailboxes aged, Christmas lights went up and down and up again. The garage never moved. When Eli Mercer arrived, he didn't know enough to look away. He was the kind who measured rooms with his eyes, guessing weight, span, possibility. A contractor's hands, a divorce's quiet, a second chance he'd convinced himself would stick this time. The Draycott place was cheap, which is another way to say ignored. He signed the papers in a dry office that smelled of toner and the mid-afternoon slumps of tired clerks. Garage is sealed, the realtor said, tapping a clause he barely read. Historic safety measure. Don't fuss with it. He didn't mean to. He meant to strip the wallpaper, sister the joists, make the roof stop talking when the wind came up. But on the third evening, hauling a dead water heater across the cracked yard, Eli felt it. A thin vein of cold air threading from under the steel. Not the clean bite of November. Something metallic. Stored. He crouched. The gap was no thicker than a coin, but air breathed from it. Slow, steady, patient. The kind of breathing that suggested waiting. He pressed his palm to the door. The metal was colder than the night. Beneath it, something ticked once, like a clock that had been asleep too long and suddenly remembered the hour. Eli stood, the heater forgotten, the yard's ragweed bowing in a wind he couldn't feel. On Millstone Street, people pretended the garage didn't exist. Inside the garage, something pretended right back. The next morning, Eli tried to convince himself it had been nothing. The air in the yard was still, cold but ordinary, the vines hanging limp like green ropes over the rusted gutters. He told himself it had just been a draft, maybe a crack in the foundation, maybe pressure from the house next door. But every time he glanced toward the garage, the thought returned. That tick, that single, dry click from behind the steel. By evening, curiosity had grown heavier than caution. He poured himself half a glass of bourbon, stood at the kitchen window, and stared across the yard. The garage door caught the dying light like a mirror that didn't quite remember how to shine. It looked almost alive. He laughed under his breath. "You're losing it, Mercer." Still, he grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The air had that smell, wet dirt, old metal, faint gasoline. He crouched again, sweeping the beam along the base of the door. The gap was there, no wider than a fingertip, and a thin draft whispered through it. "All right," he said, kneeling lower. "Let's hear it again." He waited. Nothing. He knocked once, just to prove the silence wrong. The sound went out into the cold, hollow and sharp. And then, from the other side, came a reply. One. Slow. Knock. Eli froze. The breath caught in his throat turned to ice. He stayed crouched there, listening, counting heartbeats. The quiet after the echo felt aware, like the pause between a question and its answer. He raised the flashlight again and pressed it against the seam. The beam bounced back in his eyes, too quickly, like something just beyond the metal had reflected it. Another knock. This time softer, almost deliberate. He stumbled backward, tripping over a coil of hose. "Who's in there?" he shouted. No answer. The wind stirred the vines above him, whispering through the brittle leaves. He turned to retreat toward the house when a voice, not loud, not close, but inside the door, spoke so clearly it rooted him in place. "Don't open it, Eli." He stared at the blank steel, his flashlight shaking. The voice was low, strained, but unmistakable. It was his own. For a full minute, Eli didn't move. The beam of his flashlight trembled over the gray door, painting nervous lines across the metal. The voice, his own voice, still echoed in his skull like something remembered rather than heard. "Don't open it, Eli." He swallowed hard. "Who's there?" Silence. He pressed his ear to the steel. It was cold enough to bite. No breathing, no movement. Only the faint hiss of wind weaving through the weeds. He stepped back, trying to steady his breath. "You're overtired." "Stress." House noises. Simple. He almost believed it, until the garage door thumped from the inside. Once. Sharp. Deliberate. He stumbled back again. All right, screw this. He turned for the house, but a metallic click froze him mid-step. The sound came from the side of the door, where no handle existed. A seam he hadn't noticed before, a fine vertical slit in the metal, was widening, slow and steady, as if the garage itself were taking a breath. Hey, he barked, panic in his voice now. Who's in there? The slit stopped widening. Air hissed out, colder than before, carrying that strange floral sweetness he couldn't place. Like motor oil mixed with lilac. Eli's pulse hammered. He backed away until his shoulders hit the fence. His flashlight caught a reflection again, this time not a surface, but a shape. Something was moving inside. He squinted through the tiny gap. At first he saw only the dull gleam of tools. Then, 2 points of pale reflection, level with his eyes. Eyes. His own. He dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled, slicing through the dark until it stopped on a workbench just inside the door. Lying there, half buried in dust, was a photo frame. Through the gap, he could just make out the picture inside. A man standing in front of this same garage. Same cracked driveway, same vines. The man looked exactly like him. Even the shirt. Eli's knees went weak. He reached down for the flashlight with shaking hands. But before he could grab it, the steel door began to rumble, shuddering upward on its own. The sound was deep, mechanical, like old machinery waking up. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes from the gust of icy air spilling out. The smell of oil and dust filled his lungs. And when the door finally stopped, halfway open, something stood in the darkness beyond. Tall, still, and covered by a thin, oil-soaked tarp. It swayed once, as if it had been waiting to breathe. The tarp hung motionless, edges fluttering only when the draft whispered from the open door. Eli's light cut across it, oil-stained, frayed, soaked dark at the bottom like it had once been wet and never quite dried. The shape beneath was unmistakably human. Head, shoulders, arms. Upright. His mouth went dry. Is somebody in there? Nothing. He inched closer. The beam trembled across the floor, picking up details. Dusty tools perfectly aligned on a pegboard, a coffee mug fossilized with mold, the outline of boot prints in the grime, leading directly to the tarp and stopping there. He took another step. The cold deepened. It wasn't just temperature, it had weight, like air squeezed out of the room. His breath fogged white in the flashlight beam. The tarp twitched. Eli stopped. Okay, he raised the light higher. Whoever you are, you need to come out slow. No one moved. He reached forward, caught a corner of the tarp between 2 fingers, and yanked. The cloth slithered to the ground. What stood behind it made his stomach drop. It was a mannequin, or something close. A man-sized figure built from pieces. Ribcage of welded scrap metal, spine of copper piping, joints wired together with cables, a skull molded from some pale composite material. Inside the hollow chest, something moved, a soft, mechanical twitch, like a heartbeat underwater. Eli circled it, mouth open. What the hell are you? The flashlight caught a nameplate screwed to the chest. Model, Mercer/Test Unit 01. His own last name. He staggered backward, knocking over a stool. The clang echoed like a gunshot. The figure twitched again. Its head turned slightly, gears whining, and with a faint grinding sound the jaw shifted open. A voice came out. His voice, flat and electronic. Cycle incomplete. Why did you leave me? Eli dropped the flashlight. The beam spun across the wall, landing on another photo tacked beside the workbench, one he hadn't noticed before. It showed 2 men. Both were him. One smiling, one not, and written beneath it in marker. Remember which one you are. The figure stepped forward once, the floor groaning under its weight. You always come back, it said, eyes flickering to life with a pale blue glow. Eli backed toward the door, tripping over the fallen tarp. Stay away from me. The machine tilted its head. I can't. You built me to follow. Eli froze. The words didn't feel mechanical. They felt remembered. His flashlight lay on the floor, still casting a thin cone of light that trembled across the machine's face. Beneath the dust and oil, the skin wasn't metal. It was synthetic, rubber-like, almost human. He forced air through his throat. I didn't build you. I don't even know what you are. The figure's jaw clicked as it tried to form a smile. You say that every time. What do you mean every time? Cycle resets. You forget. I wait. Its voice stuttered, like it was piecing language together from broken tape. You left the core open. I kept the door closed. Eli's pulse was wild. He stumbled backward, hand finding the frame of the garage door. I'm leaving. The machine tilted its head again, the gesture almost human. You always say that too. And then, quietly. But the door never lets you. Eli ducked under the half-open steel door and bolted across the yard. Gravel crunched under his boots. The air outside felt heavy, wrong, like the pressure before a storm. He slammed the kitchen door behind him and locked it. His hands were shaking so hard, he dropped the key twice. Through the window, the garage stood silent, the light from inside flickering faintly. He stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for movement. Nothing. No sound. No shifting metal. Finally, he turned to grab his phone. He'd call someone. The realtor, the police, anyone. But the screen was already lit. A new message, no sender ID. Cycle 02 initiated. He blinked. What? Before he could touch it, the phone went dark. Then the lights in the house flickered, once, twice, and died. Total silence. Then, from the garage, a low, deep hum started. Mechanical at first, but slowly shifting, morphing into something that almost sounded alive. And beneath it, faint but rising, came a sound that froze him where he stood. Knocking. Not from the garage this time. From inside the house. 3 knocks. Steady. Measured. From the door leading to the basement. A door he hadn't opened since moving in. Eli whispered, "Please no." The knocks came again, slower now. And then a voice, muffled through the wood. His voice again, tired, older, almost pleading. "Let me out, Eli. The machine isn't me." The words crawled through the house, like cold water. Eli stood in the kitchen, frozen, staring at the basement door. He could see the faintest tremor of movement, the doorknob twitching once, like something brushed it from the other side. "Let me out, Eli." The voice wasn't a recording. It wasn't an echo. It breathed. He whispered, "No, no, you're not real. You left me here." The sound of his own name coming from the dark made his stomach twist. He backed away, hit the counter, groped for something. His hammer, the flashlight, anything. But his hand met nothing but cold air. Then a new sound joined the knocking. A faint, steady drip, like water from a cracked pipe. Only it wasn't coming from below. It was coming from inside the walls. He stared. The plaster was sweating, small beads forming and sliding down in thin, black streaks. They smelled like burnt oil. The house creaked. Somewhere in the pipes, something moved, slowly, like metal flexing. Eli pressed his back to the wall. "I don't know who you are," he said, louder now. "But if this is some kind of joke, I swear to God." The voice cut him off. "You think this is a joke?" The tone had shifted. Anger now. "You built me. You built us. Then you shut the door." Eli's breath caught. "I didn't build anything. You did. You just don't remember which you are." The last word was followed by another deep, resonant thud from the other side of the basement door. The frame shook. Dust fell from the hinges. He stumbled forward, grabbed the lock, and twisted it hard, only to find it already unlocked. He froze. No. The doorknob turned. Just a fraction. He grabbed it instinctively and slammed it back into place, leaning his entire weight against the wood. "Stay down there." For a long second, everything went still. Then the voice came again, but it wasn't shouting anymore. It was whispering. Calm. Patient. "The one in the garage isn't me. It's what I made to keep you out. I'm the first, Eli. You need to see what's under the floor." Eli's pulse roared. "You're lying. You said that last time too." The bulb above him flickered violently, and in that brief flash of light he saw it. Oily handprints smeared across the outside of the basement door. They hadn't been there before. And then, from somewhere below, came the sound of chains uncoiling. Eli stumbled back as the door shuddered once, twice, then burst open just an inch, enough to release a blast of freezing air that smelled of earth and burnt metal. At the top of the stairs, barely visible in the dark, stood a second figure, taller, thinner, its outline twitching as though the shadows themselves couldn't contain it. "Come down, Eli," it said in his voice. "You buried me here." For a moment, Eli couldn't breathe. The figure at the top of the basement stairs stood perfectly still, head tilted slightly in a way that made its shape wrong. Human, but not quite. He tightened his grip on the hammer. Stay back. You buried me here, the voice repeated softly. But I never stopped building. Eli's throat went dry. He inched toward the wall, fumbling for the light switch. His fingers brushed cold plastic. The bulb above the stairs flickered once, twice, then flared to life. And what it revealed stopped him cold. The figure wasn't a man. Not anymore. It wore his clothes, his old flannel, his work boots, but the skin beneath had hardened, mottled with streaks of metal and resin. The arms twitched like they were remembering how to move. Its face was pale, cracked, one eye glinting faintly silver. It smiled. You almost did it right this time. Eli's voice broke. What are you? The first attempt, it said simply. Before the resets. Before you figured out how to forget. It stepped up one stair, then another, the wood groaning under its weight. When the door closed the first time, you thought you could erase me. But you left the pattern in the walls. What pattern? It raised its hand and pressed a palm against the hallway plaster. Beneath its touch, the wall began to pulse faintly, lines of light tracing through the paint like veins, spreading outward until the entire house hummed with it. Every beam, every wire, every circuit. You built the loop yourself. Eli stumbled backward. No, this was Dracot's place. I just bought it. The figure's expression almost softened. He was another version. Another name. We all come back here eventually. The hum deepened. The light in the hallway turned blue-white, steady, alive. The machine in the garage is only half the memory, the first said. The rest is beneath us. It gestured toward the basement. You wanted to forget the fire. You wanted to forget them. So you sealed me down here to keep it hidden. Eli shook his head violently. No, I wasn't even born then. Then how do I have your face? The question hit like a punch. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The figure smiled again, slow and pained. It doesn't matter. You can't stop the cycle. But maybe you can see it. It turned, walking back down the stairs. Each step echoed like the click of a clock. Halfway down, it looked over its shoulder. Come on, Eli. You've been waiting 40 years to finish this. And as it descended, the light followed it downward, bleeding into the floorboards, revealing, for just a moment, black shapes moving in the grain of the wood. Dozens of hands, pressing upward. The light bled down the stairwell like water, tracing every groove in the wood, every nail and joint, until the entire flight glowed like a spine made of bone. Eli hesitated at the top step, the hammer still trembling in his hand. Below, the thing wearing his face waited, half in shadow, half in memory. Come down, Eli. He could hear movement beneath the floor now. A low, steady rhythm. Not footsteps, tapping. Hundreds of fingers drumming against the underside of the boards. He whispered, no. You can't stay up there forever, the first said gently. The house remembers. Eli took one step down, then another. The air thickened, heavy and damp, smelling of soil and old ash. With each step, the knocking grew louder, resolving into a pattern. 3 slow taps, pause, 2 short ones. Over and over. It wasn't random. It was Morse. And he realized, with a cold shock, that it spelled a single word. Eli. He gripped the railing. Stop it. The tapping stopped. He reached the bottom of the stairs. The basement was bigger than it should have been, far bigger. The walls stretched into shadow, lined with shelves of metal containers, rows and rows of them stacked like coffins. Each one was stamped with a name. Some were familiar. Paul Dracot, Daniel Reeve, Eli Mercer, dozens of Eli Mercers. He staggered forward, whispering, no. The first stood beside one of the shelves, fingers tracing the edge of a container. You kept copies of yourself. Every time the machine rebuilt you, it stored what was left here. Memories, errors, pieces you didn't want. It pulled one of the containers loose. Inside was a photograph, faded and burned at the edges, a young man, his arms around 2 parents, smiling in front of a mint green car. The same car that had been in the garage. The same one he'd seen in the fire dream that wasn't a dream. He took the photo with shaking hands. Why would I keep this? The first's voice softened. Because you couldn't live with it. The night you killed them, you built the first door. A machine that could make you forget. But every time it worked, another version of you stayed behind. Eli's head swam. No, that's insane. Then why do you remember the fire? The question struck like a blade. He did remember it. The smoke, the screaming, the heat. He remembered the door of the car refusing to open, his mother's hand on the glass. He fell to his knees. Please, stop. The first knelt beside him. Its metal fingers brushed the concrete. There's only one way to stop it. You have to close the loop. You have to go back through the door. Eli looked up. What door? The figure pointed toward the far end of the basement. A steel door stood there, half buried in the wall, identical to the one in the garage. It began to tremble. The knocking started again, this time from inside. The steel door trembled like something alive, each knock deep enough to shake dust from the rafters. Eli staggered back, the hammer slipping from his grip. No, he said. I'm not opening it. The first, his other self, watched him calmly from the shadows. You said that last time too. Eli's throat tightened. There was no last time. The figure tilted its head. Then why do you know what happens next? The knocking stopped. For a heartbeat. The silence in the basement was so complete, he could hear the blood in his ears. Then, slowly, almost politely, came a single click. The lock turning by itself. A breath of cold air slid out, carrying the smell of iron and burned rubber. Eli whispered, "What's behind it?" Us, the first said. All the versions that didn't wake up. The lights overhead flickered. The shelves began to hum, the metal containers vibrating in unison. Lids rattled open one by one, spilling faded photographs, scraps of paper, small mechanical parts, hands, eyes, wires, pieces of the same machine he'd seen in the garage. The door creaked open an inch. From the gap spilled light, bluish, pulsing like the beat of a mechanical heart. Something moved in it. He backed away. I'm not going near that thing. The first stepped closer. You don't have a choice. The cycle's already starting again. On the floor, the spilled photographs began to shift, sliding across the concrete toward the door, drawn by the light. Faces of Eli at different ages blurred together. The humming deepened into a low, rhythmic throb. Eli shouted over it. Why me? Why any of this? The first's eyes flickered. Because you couldn't forgive yourself. You thought you could rebuild the moment until it came out clean. You built the machine to overwrite grief. But grief doesn't delete, it multiplies. The light grew brighter. Someone, was stepping through the gap now. A figure, featureless, built of pure white static, like a hole in the world. Eli stumbled back until his shoulders hit the stone wall. Close it. The first didn't move. It's not a door anymore. It's memory trying to finish. The figure from the light turned its head. There was no face, just the faint shape of one. When it spoke, its voice was both mechanical and human, and horribly familiar. We remember the fire now, Eli. Do you? He screamed, Stop. The first seized him by the arm, dragging him toward the glowing frame. You wanted to see what you buried. So see it. The light swallowed them both. For an instant, Eli saw nothing. Then flames, smoke, the crushed green Buick, his parents inside, their faces pressed against glass that reflected his own terrified stare. And through the smoke, another version of himself watching from the roadside. Older, burned, eyes bright with recognition. Every time you forget, the voice said from everywhere at once. We build another door. The light flared, then snapped out. Eli hit the ground. The basement was dark again. The steel door stood closed, cold, silent. But now there were two of them. The darkness settled around Eli like a second skin. His breath came out ragged and thin. He blinked hard, trying to adjust, and there it was, impossible, yet solid. Another door. A perfect twin to the first, set into the opposite wall where bare concrete had been moments ago. Both stood closed now, silent, their metal surfaces glimmering faintly with reflected light that didn't seem to come from any source. Eli took one shaky step backward, eyes darting between them. No, this wasn't here. This wasn't here. The first, the scarred version of himself, stood at the base of the stairs again, arms folded. The faint blue lines beneath his skin pulsed like veins of light. That's what happens when you open the memory, he said. It makes another way out. Eli's voice cracked. Out to what? To you. He laughed once, short and sharp, too close to panic. You're insane. Then open one. The first replied quietly. See where it goes. Eli turned toward the nearest door. His reflection stared back, pale, hollow, flickering slightly like an image on bad glass. He reached out, fingertips brushing the cold surface. And suddenly, he wasn't touching metal. He was touching skin. Warm. Human. He jerked back. The reflection had changed. The man on the other side wasn't copying him anymore. He was moving on his own. The reflection smiled. Eli's own voice came from the other side, muffled but clear. "You're almost home." The lights above them burst all at once. The basement flooded with that pulsing blue glow, filling every crack and shadow. Behind him, the other door began to vibrate. Eli turned. Both doors were shaking now, dust raining from the ceiling, the sound deepening into a single heartbeat that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The first shouted over the noise. One of them leads back to the memory. The other. The words cut off in static. Eli spun toward him. The first was gone, dissolved into the glow like mist. "Wait!" he yelled. The doors slammed open in unison. Light spilled out. One side gold and warm, the other sharp and white. In both thresholds, shapes moved. Hundreds of silhouettes, all identical, all him. Some turned toward him, some toward each other. And all of them spoke at once, his own voice in endless echo. "Choose, Eli." The sound shook the concrete. His mind felt split, stretching in two directions at once. One toward firelight and forgiveness, one toward the sterile hum of machinery. He staggered, gripping his head. "I can't." "You must," the voices said, perfectly in sync. "You built the cycle. You decide which one ends." He looked at the doors, one pulsing warm like a heartbeat, one steady and cold like a circuit. His hand trembled between them. Then, somewhere far above, a new sound broke through the chaos, a single, heavy knock. It came from the garage. Everything went still. The light dimmed. The heartbeat stopped. And the two doors, as if startled, slammed shut at the same time. Eli was left standing in total silence, alone. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. Cycle 03, waiting at surface. He looked toward the stairs. The faint outline of light from upstairs had turned red. Eli's hands shook as he pulled the phone from his pocket. The red glow from upstairs made the cracked screen gleam like blood. Cycle 03, waiting at surface. He tried to type, to answer, but the screen stayed frozen on the message. The light from above flickered rhythmically, like something breathing through the floorboards. He whispered, "What does that mean?" From behind the sealed doors came a low hum, distant, throbbing, mechanical. The same frequency as the heartbeat he'd felt before. He looked up the stairs. The glow pulsed brighter. Step by step, he climbed. The air grew warmer with every move, not comforting but alive, as if the house itself was exhaling. At the top, the hallway stretched longer than it should have, lined with faintly luminous handprints pressed into the wallpaper, some large, some small. He turned the corner and froze. The living room was glowing red. Every object, couch, table, picture frame, was perfectly outlined in colorless shadow, as though the world had lost all texture. The TV was on, screen filled with static. In the middle of the static, he saw himself, grainy, ghost-like, standing in the garage. The image looped every few seconds. Eli entering, looking at the tarp, turning. Over and over. Cycle complete. A voice whispered through the static. Surface level restored. Eli shouted at the screen. "Who are you?" The image twitched. The version of himself on the TV turned suddenly, now looking straight at him through the screen. "The next one," it said. The TV exploded into light. Every bulb in the house flared, and from the direction of the garage came a long, metallic groan, like a door being forced open after years of resistance. Eli ran to the kitchen window. The garage door was rising again, painfully slow. A blue-white light leaked from inside, flickering with mechanical rhythm. For the first time, he could see something moving under the light. Not a person, a shape of metal and glass, turning on unseen hinges, twisting like an exposed heart. And then came the sound that made every nerve in his body go still. Footsteps. From the driveway. Not from within the house, from outside. He pressed his forehead to the glass, peering into the red dark yard. A figure was walking toward the house. Not running. Not staggering. Just walking, slow, steady, deliberate. Even from the distance, Eli knew that face. It was him. Older. Burned. Eyes reflecting the same blue light as the machine in the garage. The man stopped at the porch and looked directly toward the window where Eli stood. His mouth moved. The words were soft but perfectly clear. "You left the door open again." The lights in the house died. and the red glow shifted to blue. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The blue light pulsing through the windows slowed, steadied, like the rhythm of something ancient remembering how to live. Eli didn't move. The older version of him stood on the porch, framed by the half-light leaking from the garage. His face was a map of burns, his hands slick with oil or blood. Eli couldn't tell which. "You left the door open again." The words echoed through the walls, vibrating picture frames, trembling the glass. Eli stumbled backward from the window, heart pounding. "No, you're not real. You're just..." A sharp knock. Once, twice, thrice. The sound came from the front door this time. He stared at it, shaking. "What do you want from me?" "You. The real one." The voice was calm, deep, cracked by time, but familiar in every syllable. Eli whispered, "What does that mean?" No answer. The knocking came again, harder now, rattling the hinges. He crept forward, step by slow step, until his shadow stretched across the warped wood of the door. He could see movement through the frosted glass panel. A silhouette, his silhouette, shifting slightly, head tilted. "Go away," Eli said. "We can't." The voice sounded closer now, right at the glass. "You split us. Every time you ran from the memory, the machine made another. One lived. One stayed. One burned." Eli pressed his palm to the door. The wood was warm, pulsing beneath his hand, like a living thing. "Open the door, Eli. Let it end." He took a slow step back. "If I open it, it starts again." "No," the voice said softly. "If you don't, it never stops." The air thickened. The house groaned like an old lung, the walls expanding and contracting with each pulse of the blue light. He could feel his phone buzzing in his pocket again. He pulled it out. A new message, no sender. "Merge sequence ready. Confirm. Y/N." He stared at it, hands trembling. "What happens if I say yes?" The voice on the porch answered. "We become what we were before you forgot." Eli's breath caught. "And if I say no? Then you'll stay alone. Forever." He looked toward the garage. The light inside was brighter now, blinding, spilling across the yard in waves that made the shadows dance like living things. Then, from inside the house, the basement door slammed open. That other voice, the one from below, shouted up the stairs. "Don't trust him, Eli. He's the copy that survived." Eli spun in both directions. The front door glowing blue, the basement flooding red again, each color fighting for the walls. The house groaned. The phone vibrated harder. "Merge sequence ready. Confirm." He stared at the blinking cursor beside the Y. Outside, the older version of him whispered through the door. "It's time to remember which one you are." Eli took a breath, thumb hovering over the screen. Then he pressed yes. The blue light swallowed everything. The moment his thumb hit yes, the phone screen didn't brighten. It opened. The glass melted into liquid light that crawled up his wrist like mercury, burning cold. Eli tried to drop it, but the device had already fused to his skin. Blue flooded his veins, racing through his arm, chest, throat, until his vision fractured into streaks of static and memory. He stumbled backward, crashing against the wall, every nerve on fire. The voice at the door whispered through the chaos. "Don't fight it. We've been waiting for this." The air thickened until the entire house trembled. The floorboard split, seams glowing with the same pale light that now poured from Eli's eyes. He could see everything at once. The house, the garage, the basement, all three overlapping like layers of the same dream. He was in all of them. In the garage, the machine, the humanoid shell under the tarp, was moving, its chest cavity opening like a ribcage. Inside, something pulsed with rhythm and breath. In the basement, the containers rattled open again, each one spilling light and sound. Laughter, sobbing, screams, memories he had buried. And in the living room, Eli Mercer stood, one burned, one whole, one flickering like film on an old projector. The older version stepped through the front door. The younger one rose from the basement stairs. And the machine walked in from the garage. All three stopped in front of him. The house was pulsing now, floorboards flexing like muscle. The ceiling lights burst one by one, raining glass. The burned one spoke first. "I remember the fire." The machine's voice followed. "I remember the build." The younger one, the first from the basement, whispered. "And I remember why." Eli tried to speak, but the blue light pouring from his mouth drowned the words. The older version stepped closer. You can't live in fragments, Eli. The door never wanted to keep us apart. The machine opened its chest wider. Inside was a glowing core, a metal heart wrapped in wires and ash. It wanted to make us one. The first pressed a hand against Eli's chest. Say it. What? He gasped. Say the word you used to seal the first door. Eli's mind burned. He could see the fire again. The Buick, the smoke, his parents screaming, his own hand reaching for the ignition that wouldn't turn. The word fell from his lips before he understood it. Reset. The light erupted outward. Every door in the house, basement, garage, front, blew open at once, and through them came the flood. Faces, voices, every forgotten version of himself pouring in, merging, folding, collapsing into one body. The walls melted into white. The floor vanished. He was standing nowhere and everywhere. His own voice echoed around him, layered and infinite. Cycle complete, merging memory with source. Then a pause, and a final, single voice, calm, human, whole. Eli Mercer. Integration successful. He looked down. His reflection stared back from the white floor, not burned, not divided. Just him. And for the first time, it didn't speak back. The white around him began to pulse. Slow, warm, almost like a heartbeat returning to a body that had forgotten how. Eli breathed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the air didn't hurt. He looked down at his hands. They were clean. No burns, no oil, no flickering light under the skin. Just hands. Real. He turned in the endless white, expecting to find walls, edges, something. Instead, the space rippled with his movements, like walking through fog that remembered where he'd been. Cycle complete, said a voice that wasn't a voice at all, more a thought echoing inside him. Memory restored. Core identity stabilized. Eli whispered, "Who's saying that?" "You are." The answer came from everywhere and nowhere, intimate as breath. A seam of light split the white world open, revealing the outline of a room, familiar but wrong. His old garage, now impossibly clean. The walls gleamed, the tools shone like new, everything waiting. He stepped inside. The air smelled like steel, ozone, and rain. At the center stood the machine, the same one that had called him Builder. Only now it was motionless, chest sealed, eyes dim. He circled it slowly. The tag on its chest still read Mercer Unit 01. Eli touched the metal skin. It was cold. And yet, beneath his palm, he felt the faintest pulse. "Are you still in there?" he asked softly. No answer. He turned toward the workbench. A notebook lay there, leather cover cracked with age. The first page was written in his own hand. Project Mercer, Memory Reconciliation Device. Goal: remove trauma from human consciousness and store it externally. Status: incomplete. He flipped to the last page. A single line. "If you're reading this, it worked. But you won't like what comes next." Eli's breath caught. What comes next? The lights flickered. The machine's head lifted slowly, joints creaking. Its eyes ignited, soft amber now, not blue. "You forgot something," it said quietly. Eli stepped back. "What?" The program wasn't built to end. It was built to repeat until you forgave yourself. The floor vibrated. The walls began to darken, shifting from white to gray to deep, rusty red. Eli shouted, "No, no, I stopped it. I ended the cycle." "Integration isn't the same as peace," the machine replied. Its voice was kind, almost human. "You merged the pieces, but you never faced the memory." Behind the machine, a doorway shimmered into being, a doorway shaped in firelight. Through it, Eli could see the car again, the smoke, his mother's hand on the glass. "One last door," the machine said. "You can't forgive yourself from outside the fire." Eli's knees weakened. The air smelled of burning vinyl and gasoline. "I can't do it again," he whispered. "Then it will start again," the machine said simply. "Because this isn't punishment, Eli. It's the only way home." The doorway pulsed, the sound of a heartbeat sinking to his own. He stared into the flames, tears cutting through the soot on his face. And then, quietly, he stepped through. The moment Eli stepped through, sound disappeared. Not silence, something deeper. The world folded in on itself. Light turned thick, color turned memory. Then the roar came. Flame rushed up around him, gold and white and furious. The heat wasn't pain, it was memory itself burning alive. He staggered forward, shielding his face, the air filled with the smell of oil and smoke. And there it was, the Buick. The mint green car, headlights melted, front tires half buried in a ditch. The windshield was cracked, but not shattered, as though the glass had refused to break before everything else did. He was inside it now, trapped in the driver's seat. The engine was still running. The dashboard glowed faintly red. The key trembled in the ignition like it was alive. From the passenger seat, a soft sound. His mother's voice, hoarse and small. Eli, turn it off. He turned. She was there, gray skin, tear tracks cutting through soot. Her hand reached for him through the haze, shaking. Behind her, his father slumped forward, motionless. Eli pressed his hands to the key. His throat locked. I tried, he whispered. It wouldn't turn. It wouldn't. You didn't try, his mother said, eyes glinting through smoke. You ran. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew enough to build doors to hide behind, said another voice, his own. He looked to the rearview mirror. The burned version of him sat in the back seat, calm, eyes reflecting flame. Every cycle, you stopped before this moment. Every time, you looked away. You can't erase guilt by forgetting it. Eli shook his head violently. I can't change it. They're gone. Then forgive the boy who left them, the burned one said. Or we start again. The world around him flickered, the flames slowing, freezing midair. His mother's hand hung inches from his shoulder, trembling in place. The sound of the engine became a heartbeat. Eli reached for her hand. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to leave. Her fingers touched his. The firelight dimmed. Then don't, she said gently. Stay with us long enough to let go. The burned version opened his door and stepped out into the light. The car began to dissolve, metal curling into smoke, flames fading into soft white ash. Eli closed his eyes. The heat vanished. The smell of burning was replaced by rain. When he opened them again, he was standing in the driveway outside the garage. Morning. The vines were gone. The air was clean. The steel door stood open, sunlight spilling inside. Inside, nothing waited but silence and dust. He whispered to the air, Is it over? No answer came. Only a breeze, moving through the garage like a sigh. Then, softly, from somewhere behind him. One more step, Eli. He turned. Standing at the edge of the yard was the machine, motionless, eyes now gold instead of blue. You faced the fire, it said. Now see what remains. It pointed toward the open door of the garage. Inside, on the floor, lay a single small object, a key. The same key that had never turned. The key lay on the cracked concrete like something left behind by a storm. It wasn't shiny, it wasn't new. It looked ordinary, the kind you'd forget on a kitchen counter or lose between couch cushions. But Eli knew it immediately. That small piece of metal had decided everything. It had refused to turn. He crouched slowly, the morning light slanting over his shoulder, and picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around it, warmth bled through his palm, not burning, but alive. A faint vibration hummed through the ground beneath him, rippling outward through the garage. The air shimmered. The smell of ash vanished. The machine stepped closer, its golden eyes dim but steady. That's the first one, it said. The key that locked the door between you and what you couldn't face. Eli looked at it, confused. Then what am I supposed to do with it? Use it. He turned the key over in his hand. It was engraved, though the markings were almost invisible. He squinted. Letters. M-E-R-C-E-R. Each one faintly etched, but between them smaller text he hadn't seen before. Memory engine. Reset/contain/erase/rebuild. Eli's stomach sank. You mean I built this? The machine nodded once. And every time you used it, you built another you to carry the weight. He stepped backward. Then I can destroy it. I can end it. You can't destroy guilt, the machine said quietly. But you can choose what to remember. Eli stared at the open garage. For the first time, it looked smaller. Mortal. Dust motes drifted in the sunlight like quiet ghosts. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The sound of his boots echoed once, twice, then vanished, swallowed by the still air. There was something on the wall, a faint outline he hadn't noticed before. A door within the wall, smaller, rectangular, almost hidden beneath a layer of grime. He brushed it with his sleeve. Metal. A keyhole, simple and circular. The key fit perfectly. The machine stood at the threshold, watching. Every cycle ends here, it said. The question is whether you want another. Eli hesitated, the key trembling in his fingers. What happens if I turn it? You'll remember everything. For real. No resets. No forgetting. He looked back at the sunlight outside, at the faint outline of the life he'd tried to rebuild over and over again. He could walk away, pretend, start another cycle, or he could turn the key. He whispered, I don't want to forget anymore. He turned it. A soft click. Then, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from inside his bones. The wall behind the keyhole shimmered, then began to dissolve, revealing another room, smaller, empty, with a single object sitting in the middle. A mirror. Eli stepped toward it slowly, heart pounding. His reflection wasn't the man he'd seen before. Not burned, not fractured, younger, whole. But the reflection spoke first. You made peace with the fire, it said. Now make peace with yourself. Eli reached out and touched the glass. It rippled like water, and a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time, the garage didn't feel haunted. It felt like home. Then the reflection smiled softly. One more truth, Eli, it whispered. The machine wasn't built to forget the dead. The mirror flashed once, blinding, and Eli stumbled back. When his vision cleared, the reflection was gone. In its place, two figures stood behind the glass, a man and a woman, holding hands. His parents. Eli's knees nearly gave out. His parents stood side by side in the mirror's glow, their faces soft, younger than he remembered, untouched by smoke or pain. His mother's eyes shone with quiet light. His father's hand rested on her shoulder the way he used to after a long day at the shop. Eli whispered, You're not real. His mother smiled. Neither were the nightmares. He stepped closer, breath trembling. I killed you. I left you in that car. His father shook his head. You were a boy who made a mistake. We all burn on the way to forgiveness, son. The words hit him like a flood. His chest tightened, his throat closing on a sob. I spent my life trying to erase it. I built all this because I couldn't. You couldn't face what you'd already survived, his mother said gently. So you turned grief into a machine. The glass rippled, and their shapes grew clearer. Behind them, he could see flashes of all the versions of himself. Working, crying, building. Each one frozen in their own loop. Each trapped inside the walls of the same house. Eli raised his hand to the glass, fingertips almost touching theirs. Then what happens if I forgive myself? His father's smile deepened, proud and sad. Then we stop haunting you. The light in the mirror brightened until it filled the entire garage. The air trembled, vibrating with something deeper than sound. Release. The machine, still standing in the doorway, lowered its head slightly, as if in reverence. Integration complete, it said softly. Emotional anomaly resolved. Eli turned toward it. They're gone. They were never gone, the machine answered. Only waiting for you to let them leave. He looked back at the mirror. The figures of his parents were fading, but their smiles remained, warm, forgiving, unbroken by time. His mother's voice, barely audible now, drifted through the air. Live a life worth remembering, Eli. The glass shimmered once more, then went still. His reflection returned. Just him. Eli exhaled shakily. The garage was silent. The light through the open door was golden, morning again. He turned to the machine. What now? Now you live outside the loop. But the door remains. Someone will find it again one day. Eli frowned. Why? The machine's gaze was almost human. Because forgiveness isn't inherited. It's rediscovered. For a long time, Eli said nothing. The air felt lighter, as though the house had finally taken a full breath. He walked to the threshold of the garage, sunlight spilling over his hands. The vines that once strangled the walls were gone. The house beyond looked normal, almost beautiful. He turned back one last time. Goodbye. The machine inclined its head. Goodbye, Eli Mercer. The light flickered softly. Then the machine powered down, eyes dimming to black. Eli stepped outside. For the first time, the air didn't hum with memory. It was just air. He smiled, small, real. And behind him, in the dark of the empty garage, the mirror shimmered once, as though exhaling a final breath. The days that followed felt wrong in their simplicity. No knocks, no whispers, no dreams that looped like broken reels of film. Eli fixed the porch step, painted the siding. ate breakfast without the walls breathing. For the first time since he could remember, he slept through the night. Millstone Street, too, seemed to wake up. The neighbors, those who had once crossed the road rather than look at the house, began to nod to him in passing. Someone mowed their lawn again. The old woman next door even brought pie, though she didn't remember why she had ever been afraid of the garage. It was as if the entire street had sighed and released something heavy. Inside, the house had changed. The basement was smaller now, normal. The double doors were gone, replaced by plain concrete. The walls no longer pulsed with light or whispers. When he walked past the garage, all he saw was dust and sunlight. And yet, sometimes, when he stood too long at the threshold, he felt it, a quiet heartbeat deep in the floor, like the echo of something sleeping. He didn't fear it anymore. He simply nodded to it, like an old friend. Weeks passed. One evening, Eli sat on the porch watching the sun fall behind the roofs of Millstone Street. He turned the small key, the same one that had once started everything, over in his palm. The metal was dull now, lifeless, the engraving almost worn away. He whispered, "You don't control me anymore." As if in response, a breeze moved through the yard, carrying the smell of rain and engine oil, the scent of the past saying goodbye. He smiled. When night came, he went to the garage one last time. Inside, the mirror still stood where he'd left it. Dust had begun to settle on the frame, but the glass was clear. He looked at his reflection. Older, calmer, whole. No machine behind him. No copies. Just Eli Mercer. He reached out, touched the glass gently. "Thank you," he said. The reflection nodded back, almost imperceptibly. He turned off the light, pulled the door down, and locked it, not to trap anything inside, but to keep the peace in. When he stepped back into the yard, the stars had come out, bright, indifferent, real. He walked toward the house, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. Behind him, the garage stood quiet. No hum, no glow, just a structure of wood and steel, as unremarkable as every other on the street. And for the first time in 40 years, Millstone Street was ordinary again. By spring, Eli had become something of a legend, though not the kind people whispered about with fear anymore. He was the man who fixed the Draycott house, the one who turned the ghost of Millstone Street into just another home. He'd started helping his neighbors, repaired the Keller's porch, replaced wiring in the Miller attic. When people thanked him, he'd only smile and say, "It's easy once you know what needs rebuilding." No one knew what he meant, but they could see it in his eyes, the kind of calm that comes only after surviving something bigger than fear. Inside, his life settled into small, human rhythms. Coffee, morning walks, music. The mirror in the garage gathered dust. The machine stayed still, its gold eyes dark. Sometimes he'd talk to it, softly, while tightening bolts or organizing tools. He didn't expect answers. He just liked the quiet company. Then, one afternoon, a boy from up the street, 12, curious, fearless in the way kids are, wandered into the yard while Eli was painting the fence. "Hey, Mr. Mercer," the boy said. "Is it true someone used to disappear in that garage?" Eli smiled, slow and patient. "People disappear in all kinds of ways, son. Sometimes you spend years learning how to come back." The boy frowned, not understanding, and pointed. "You gonna sell the house now that it's fixed?" Eli looked at the garage. The light hit it just right, and for a moment he thought he saw movement, just dust, swirling in a way that looked like breath. He shook his head. "No, I think I'll stay a while." The boy nodded and ran off. Eli watched him go, the laughter fading into the hum of distant traffic. He leaned against the fence, breathing in the scent of cut grass and rain on metal. For a long time, he believed forgiveness was something you had to find. Now he knew it was something you built, slowly, carefully, one repaired moment at a time. That night, he sat by the open garage door, watching the moonlight spill across the floor. The machine sat quietly in its corner, a relic of everything he'd survived. He raised his glass of bourbon toward it. "To the next one who finds you," he said softly. "May they build better than I did." He drank. And in the quiet, for the first time, the machine's light flickered once. Gold, faint, like a heartbeat that had learned to rest. The summer that followed was easy, quiet, the kind of peace that didn't need proving. Eli kept the garage open most days, lights spilling across the floorboards that had once hummed with impossible life. He'd sit there for hours, working on small engines or sanding down old furniture, the radio murmuring softly in the corner. Sometimes he'd glance at the machine, still, silent, the faintest sheen of dust softening its surface. He never powered it back on. He didn't need to. One late afternoon, while cleaning out the last of the shelves, he found something pressed flat against the far wall, a folded envelope sealed with a thumbprint. It was his own. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the writing neat but unfamiliar. Every door opens twice. Once to memory, once to whoever comes next. He turned the note over, blank. But when he lifted his eyes, something about the far wall had changed. A faint line traced itself across the plaster, a square shape, perfectly smooth, as if something beneath the surface was waiting to be found. He stared at it for a long time, then laughed quietly. Not again. He set his hand against the wall. It was solid, cold, still. But as he pulled his hand away, a small patch of dust fell free, revealing metal beneath. Steel. He didn't touch it again. Instead, he walked out into the sunlight, closing the door behind him with a soft, final click. That night, the neighborhood lights blinked on one by one, glowing warm against the dark. Somewhere down the street, a car engine coughed to life, and the sound made Eli smile instead of flinch. He sat on the porch until the crickets began their chorus, the air thick with summer. Inside the garage, the quiet deepened. The machine sat motionless in the dark. The mirror reflected nothing but shadow. And on the far wall, hidden beneath a thin layer of paint and dust, a new keyhole shimmered faintly in the moonlight, small, patient, waiting. The faintest whisper stirred the still air. Cycle 04, pending. The sound was so soft it could have been the wind. Outside, Eli looked up at the stars, bright, countless, free, and smiled without knowing why. For the first time, he didn't need to understand the story to feel its ending. The garage remained. Quiet, breathing, ready for whoever would open it next.